I've always seen my wife as my closest confidant, someone dependable and trustworthy. So it was a shock when she took a wrong turn and faced the consequences. Tonight, I hoped for a bonus, but I had doubts. It was the first time in 3 years I wore my dark blue tuxedo, looking sharp yet feeling out of place. Instead of relaxing in my favorite chair with a drink, I found myself at a fundraiser with colleagues and spouses, a big social event in our small Midwest town. I'd asked my wife to dress up, and she certainly did, maybe too much. She looked stunning but overly tempting. At 35, she was at her peak beauty, turning heads as she descended the stairs in a revealing maroon dress. Despite her allure, she was mine, and I made that clear. While I'd rather be home, my wife seemed comfortable mingling with the city's elite. She had a natural charm, drawing people to her effortlessly. As I returned from the bar, I found her engrossed in conversation with Senator Thomas Norberto, a charming figure often compared to Tom Selleck. His presence seemed to captivate her like never before, leaving me feeling like a bystander to her infatuation. Noticing they ignored me, I stepped in, politely reminding the senator of my seat. He continued chatting with my delighted wife, so I intervened more assertively, placing drinks between them until he got the message. When he finally acknowledged my presence, he announced he'd leave to find his seat, dismissing me. Fuming, I returned to my place, calling him foolish. My wife defended him, claiming I was rude to a senator. I reminded her of our relationship boundaries, but she rolled her eyes, a move I always disliked. Avoiding a scene, I dropped the matter. Dinner passed, and the band resumed playing. I invited my wife to dance, but she refused, leaving me disappointed. While I chatted with others, I kept an eye on the senator, who eventually left for a veranda. Concerned, I found him there, arm around my wife, engaged in a serious conversation. I intervened, but someone stopped me, warning not to mess with the senator, forcing me out. "I'm warning you, that's my wife he's touching," I gritted out as I was pushed back into the ballroom. Demanding he retrieve her, I threatened a scene. He cursed quietly, turning back to the senator. Hess returned, appearing flustered, claiming ignorance. I grabbed her hand, leading her out. The ride home started in silence, but I knew it wouldn't last. She unleashed, accusing me of humiliating her. I defended my boundaries, reminding her of our marriage. "You're being possessive, crossing a line. You acted like a love-struck teen," she retorted, blushing. She remained silent, conceding my point. Our tension affected the kids, dinner becoming awkward. On Wednesday, she insisted on a serious talk, never a good sign. It ended poorly. She revealed plans to attend another fundraiser with the senator, calling it a non-date. I objected, questioning the appropriateness. She denied any wrongdoing, claiming innocence. I challenged her definition of a date, citing a double standard with her friend Angie. Her reaction confirmed my suspicions. She had issues with Angie, known for her charm. "It's completely different, you know that," she argued, claiming a date with a U.S. senator wasn't the same as a regular date. "There's a big distinction, right?" "Hess, you can't go out with another guy. We're married, remember?" I reminded her, emphasizing our vows. "You don't own me, Reggie, even though we're married," she retorted. "I can do what I want." "I'm not saying you're my property, but you're the mother of our kids. I don't want to break up our family," I pleaded, hoping to reach her. "You're being ridiculous," she dismissed, refusing to acknowledge the seriousness of the situation. I was shocked when Hester appeared in a stunning white gown for her date. Our kids were amazed, asking why she was dressed up. She struggled to explain, but I intervened, bluntly stating the truth. As the doorbell rang, I confronted her with a choice, him or us. She opened the door to a security guard, revealing a black limo outside. "Remember to behave for Daddy," she said before leaving. I assumed it was her, stunned momentarily before focusing on my kids who needed attention. Drowning sorrows in booze wasn't an option. I planned a few FaceTime calls, one to my parents, one to hers. The kids enjoyed chatting with their grandparents. Starting with Hester's parents, I anticipated her recent actions would upset them. We laughed until Hester's absence was noticed. "Where's my daughter, Reggie? Have you hidden her?" my mother-in-law joked. I softly explained Hester was on a date with Senator Thomas Norberto, expecting her return the next day. Shocked, my in-laws couldn't believe I let her go. I tried reasoning with her, emphasizing family neglect, but she seemed convinced it was acceptable. The kids took over the conversation, a welcome distraction. My mother-in-law urged communication and patience. Later, I called my parents, receiving less sympathetic advice from my mother, who recommended a lawyer. After a few calls, I ordered pizza, watched a Disney movie with the kids, and struggled to sleep, distracted by ESPN. In the morning, I made pancakes and bacon, reassuring the kids their mom would return soon, even if it was uncertain. There was no rush to come home after spending the night with another man. The black limo arrived in our driveway around 1 p.m., catching the attention of our kids and neighbors. Usually they'd rush to greet their mom, but this time they stayed put, disappointed by her lackluster appearance. She still wore the same dress from the night before, now wrinkled and tired-looking. I sat in the living room as she entered, showing no eagerness to greet her. "Hey," she greeted, acknowledging our night apart. "Looks like you and the kids managed without me," I replied sharply. She headed upstairs, asking for rest and a shower. I raised my hands in mock surrender, realizing our relationship was over. Now, I focused on making things easy for my kids, avoiding becoming a weekend-only father. The question lingered. Could I stay until the kids graduated high school? When Hester finally came downstairs at 7 p.m., I'd already made dinner. I mentioned leftovers in the fridge, receiving a faint smile. The kids sensed tension and kept their distance. Alone, Hester accused me of poisoning their minds. I denied it, highlighting the impact of her actions on them and our neighbors. "I didn't break up our family," she defended, shifting blame to me. "It's up to you. If you can work on your ego issues, we can heal and keep our family together. But if you continue being petty and nasty, we'll have to go our separate ways, and you can be Mr. Part-Time Dad," she warned, catching me off guard. I had expected regret, not resistance and anger. "It's 1 p.m, you idiot," I retorted. "You couldn't get enough last night? Needed a half-day fling, huh?" She paused, avoiding my gaze. "We can get past this and go back to how things were. I know I hurt you and I'm sorry. But I needed this for myself and I don't regret it," she said, unapologetic. "That's a terrible apology if that's what it is," I remarked. "You're only sorry for hurting me, not for anything else." "It was amazing for you," she said defensively. My response matched her conviction. "Your actions betrayed our vows and our family." I recounted how surprised she was when I found her in our guest bedroom. "We can't move forward unless you try," she pleaded. "No, it's too late now," I clarified, locking her out of the room. I slept soundly that night, exhausted from 48 hours of tension. The next morning, I continued our Sunday brunch tradition, making Belgian waffles. "Mom looks rough, like she hasn't slept," Elise observed as we sat down to eat. "Maybe you should go out more on Friday nights," I suggested. Hess burst into tears and fled to the bedroom, leaving the children puzzled. "Did I say something wrong?" Elise innocently asked. "No, sweetheart, Mommy probably just missed the waffles," I reassured softly. Later, as I relaxed in my lazy boy watching the Cubs game, the bedroom door slammed open and a frantic Hester stormed in, ranting incoherently. "Calm down, honey. I can't understand you with all the drooling and spitting," I remarked. She sobbed, accusing me of making her seem promiscuous to her parents. "What's a Kardashian, Mommy?" Elise asked, joining the scene. I exchanged a glance with Hester, who composed herself and sent the kids to their rooms before confronting me. "Tell me," she demanded as soon as the kids were out of earshot. "I saw no reason to hide it from your parents since you were just following a senator to a fundraiser," I explained. "If they agree with me, it's not my fault. And by the way, my mom had a similar reaction, so watch out next time she's near." "No, it's not like that," she began, then stopped abruptly. "An amazing experience," I interjected. "If looks could eliminate, I'd be a stain on the chair. But it doesn't bother me much." I gestured for her to move so I could see the TV before she hurried out of the room. For the following 2 weeks, I slept in the guest room. Noticing this, I told the kids that I had a cold and didn't want their mother to catch it. I assumed Eliza had figured out my deception, but she prudently kept it to herself without saying anything. A 7-year-old child demonstrates impressive intelligence. One night, an hour after Hess had gone upstairs, I returned to our sharing bed and softly climbed into her. When the alarm went off the next morning, she snuggled up next to me. "It feels great," she muttered. "It's time to come to your senses." She attempted to touch me. I stopped her by placing my hand on her forearm and drawing her hand away. I adjusted our position so that we were facing each other on the bed. "Certain acts are best performed when you can make direct eye contact. Before I decide to sleep with you again, you will have to get tested and provide me with the results," I said softly. "You could be willing to trust Senator, but I am not." Tears welled in her eyes. She appeared to be about to say something, but then decided not to. Instead, she simply nodded. It revealed to me that she and the senator were not using protection. The scenario is growing very intriguing. Originally, I planned to stay until the kids finished high school, roughly another 14 years until Nate headed to college. My love for them made me willing to endure, but the prospect of long-term closeness absence, especially with an attractive woman under the same roof, seemed untenable. Despite concerns about my reputation, my feelings for her had dwindled over the past 2 weeks. Seeing her leave the bed with sadness no longer stirred me as it once did. My own pain prevented me from offering comfort. Who was she now? The woman I married would have understood my disapproval of her seeing someone else. Hester and I met in college, started dating 3 months later, and married within 2 years. She worked as an actuary, a job requiring precision and honesty, traits that balanced my spontaneity and humor. Despite our differences, I envisioned celebrating 50 years of marriage. Senator Thomas Norberto unexpectedly became a part of our lives. 10 days after returning to our shared bed, Hester handed me an envelope as I came home from work. Inside was her clear bill of health. "Hope you're satisfied," she coldly whispered. "You have no idea how humiliating this was. I may never face Dr. Sanjay again." "Not my fault, baby," I replied plainly. "Stay faithful, and you won't be embarrassed." She hissed softly but couldn't retort. As she walked away, I pressed on. "How often has Senator contacted you?" She began, but I silenced her with a gesture. With a grimace, she handed over her phone. I found texts and calls from him, but no evidence of further meetings. "Damn it," I exclaimed. "We're on thin ice." "Agreed," she returned seriously, pocketing her phone and heading to the kitchen. That night, she showed me affection in bed, and instinct took over. I didn't have feelings for her, I just fulfilled my needs. I knew she tried to win me back, but I was preoccupied. Hester's abrupt return home sparked neighborhood gossip. Sympathetic looks from men and smirks from women hinted at rumors. One evening, Eliza approached me asking about a women's club. I kept my composure, explaining Mommy's mistake and reassuring her. I hugged her, concealing my emotions, knowing this moment would haunt me forever. A feeling of normality gradually returned to our household, at least as far as I could see. Yet, it was a different kind of normalcy. Whether Hesse admitted it or not, things would never revert to how they were before that day. I couldn't fully trust her again, nor could I forgive or forget the profound disrespect she had shown me and our family. Love. To borrow from Tina Turner, what does love have to do with any of this? 6 months later, he seemed to grasp something or find the courage to speak up. Following that evening, which she instigated, I turned away from her to sleep, as had become customary since then. Before she said anything, I could hear her crying. "Reggie? Reggie, can we talk?" "What's up?" she asked meekly. "Sure," I sighed. "Could you please turn around?" Her tone conveyed clear irritation as she inquired. I sighed again, trying to mask her frustration. Then I turned to meet her gaze. She kept glancing at my eyes. "Do you realize how long it's been since we were close? Say it." "I did say it," I insisted. "You had the courage to do it, have the bravery to admit it. We haven't been close since I went on a date." "I noticed," she said. "You satisfy me physically, then sleep. You ensure I'm happy, but it feels purely physical. And you haven't hugged me since. I miss that. Closeness, you can't even say those words." "Baby," I replied. "Your date? You cheated on me with him. Admit it, I'm not stupid. You go on a date and don't come back until the next day. You make it seem cheap and disgusting," she protested. "Yes, we were lovemaking on Saturday night, and it was great. He was gentle and caring, just like you. Really, it was an unforgettable experience. That's why we're not making love anymore." "Yes, don't you see? You gave him something that, as you promised, was exclusively mine. And you enjoyed everything. It was unforgettable, as you said." "Come on, Reg. It was only one night." 2 days. From a statistical standpoint, this is little compared to the hundreds of days we'll spend married. "We can forget it, Reg, if you're willing to try," she pleaded. "Thanks for the math lesson, but I've never seen our marriage as a math problem. Would you feel the same if I did it with Mary Jo Young? Mary Jo Young, a divorced blonde with a nice figure, lives close by. Almost every woman on our street watches her closely with her husband." "Wait, are you suggesting you want Mary Jo? No way," she exclaimed. "Listen to your inner voice." "I never said I wanted Mary Jo. That was you. I was just wondering how you'd react if I did," I clarified. She looked puzzled until it clicked. Then her expression turned angry. "I can read between the lines. No need for words," I replied smugly. She avoided eye contact. "Do you realize, because of what happened, the other girls in the neighborhood bullied Eliza? They overheard their mothers calling you names. It wasn't pleasant, I informed her. Her anger shifted to disbelief at the news. Eliza never mentioned it. She took a breath, processing. I'm truly sorry. Sorry isn't enough. You call the night unforgettable. It was unforgettable, but for betrayal, I declared. With that, I turned away and went to bed, unaware of her next move. Credit is due to Hester. Over the next few months, she committed herself to being an exceptional mother. Traditionally, I had been the primary caregiver for our children. But suddenly, Hester took on her share of responsibilities, driving the kids to their various activities and offering them warm support. It made me wonder if she had finally realized that prioritizing our family over her own desires was essential to keeping us together. What a revelation. The children seemed to appreciate the extra attention, but once again, my daughter demonstrated her remarkable perceptiveness beyond her 8 years. Mom is really trying, Daddy, she said to me one day. I hope she gets a proper apology for whatever she did wrong. I tried to respond with a genuine smile, acknowledging her keen awareness of the world around her. Everything appeared normal in the Wilkerson household. I worked diligently to maintain appearances. As for Hester, she seemed eager to make tremendous efforts, not only to uphold appearances, but also to regain my favor. We were two individuals sharing a roof and enjoying certain benefits. Despite her strong desire for normalcy, she expected me to give in eventually. Somewhere within me, remnants of my affection for her remained. However, I couldn't erase 9 years of having her as the focal point of my life. She made things harder for herself by maintaining communication with Senator Prick. I checked her phone calls and messages shortly after her date. She made sure they were clear. Yet she didn't realize how easy it was to clone a phone and access all communications. He seemed to keep in touch regularly, while she tried to keep him at arm's length, at least for now. Can we schedule another date soon? I'll be in town, he texted nearly a month ago. My hubby is still upset from last time, she replied. I can't risk it. Needless to say, I wasn't impressed. A month later, we marked our 10th anniversary with a family trip to Chuck E. Cheese. The kids had a blast, but Hester didn't. She waited until the kids were playing games before expressing her disappointment with me. We've always marked our anniversaries, just the two of us, with a special night. You're altering tradition because you're still holding a grudge? When did you become so petty and small? She remarked, once more. The answer to that question is similar to many others about your date. You did this to me, to us, and to yourself, I replied. Can't you move past this? She pleaded. How often do you two communicate? I asked directly. She dared to smirk before reaching into her pocket, retrieving her phone and handing it to me. I tossed it high into the air and caught it easily when it fell. I understand you've been disloyal, but I also acknowledge your intelligence. I bet there's no evidence of your affair on that phone, not since I confiscated it the first time. However, there are records of past texts and calls that you may not have initiated, but I've never heard you explicitly reject the person. Why is that? Her cheeks flushed as she looked away. Yes, I knew that was a rhetorical question, I muttered. Amidst this turmoil, my career and my children provided stability. Though my colleagues often remarked that I looked like I needed a good night's sleep or even 6, I was convinced I was developing an ulcer. My hard drinks consumption had increased, and sleep was elusive. There were nights when I lay awake for hours, staring at my wife, wondering what went wrong. She insisted on loving me, justifying her actions as separate from our relationship. She felt entitled to her night out with Senator Prick and showed no guilt for her behavior, only regret for the injury she caused me. I waited for the other shoe to drop. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law became a source of strength during this challenging time. She repeatedly expressed regret for her daughter's actions. We apologize, Reggie. We didn't raise her to be this selfish, but I really hope you can find a way to move past this. During one of her calls to check on me, she said, I know what you're doing for the children. As I headed to the kitchen, I grabbed another cooler of beer to take outside. We were having our usual monthly summer picnic in the neighborhood. Outside, we had 2 grills going, offering a variety of hot and cold dishes, fruits, desserts, and drinks. The weather was perfect, sunny, and 80 degrees Fahrenheit with hardly a breeze. The gathering had started a few hours ago and was expected to continue for another 5 or 6. These gatherings were always enjoyable for both kids and adults alike. As I moved through the house, I heard female voices from our home office, typically off limits to non-family. I intended to redirect them to the family room or living area. While most activity happened outside, Sometimes someone sought refuge indoors for AC or quiet talks. However, this particular space posed a problem. Yeah, when Reggie takes charge, I can't help but think of him. He's assertive, driven, and focused on his goals. Sometimes I can't shake the memory of that night. It's something I'll cherish forever, Hester declared to her companion as I approached the room. I halted in my tracks, my legs weakening, almost stumbling. Damn, how many people know I'm being betrayed? I heard laughter. Apparently there were 3 of them inside. I missed the rest of the conversation as I fought the urge to vomit. I was relieved to reach the restroom before getting sick, emptying everything from the night before, breakfast, and lunch. After tidying up, I brought the cooler of beer outside and gave 2 bottles to the guys manning the grills. Hey, Reg, you all right? You seem a bit off, said John Lasky, casually concerned. John, I'm good, I replied before drifting away. I stayed quiet for the rest of the gathering. When Hester and her friends returned, I felt eyes on me and noticed smirks aimed my way. Maybe I was losing it, but it seemed like almost every woman at the BBQ was sneering at me. Later that night, after putting the kids to bed and finishing the cleanup, I confronted my wife about my discomfort. She sat on a lounge chair, sipping a wine cooler, looking content. I joined her. Did anyone show up today who doesn't know about your affair? I asked sincerely. She looked taken aback. I returned her gaze, pretending innocence. I might have mentioned it to a couple girlfriends recently. It was quite the experience, she chuckled. He's a charming senator, I couldn't help but share. So first you cheat, then you embarrass me in front of your friends, making every husband aware of your infidelity and branding me as a betrayed, I accused. I'm not unfaithful, and I won't tolerate being labeled as such, she yelled back. It was just one mistake. I didn't sleep with a stranger in some seedy motel. Her eyes flashed with intensity as she rose from her chaise lounge. I've had enough of this, she declared, her voice growing louder. You've been playing games for over a year now. Your wife had an affair with another man, a handsome and muscular man. It's time to move forward. I won't be held hostage by your insecurities any longer. If you can't let go, that's your problem. Either file for divorce or face reality. I'm tired of living a lie with you, pretending to be the perfect couple. Decide now. Her outburst caught me off guard, and I sat in stunned silence for what felt like hours. She had already walked away, leaving me alone, even though I had just regained consciousness. I'm naturally reserved and slow to react, which some, including my wife, interpret as weakness. I seldom panic or act hastily. It pains me to think about not seeing my children every day, but I'm hopeful to salvage my family. I had braced myself for the worst, with a lawyer on standby to fight for me, so I took action. First thing Monday morning, Hester was served with divorce papers at her workplace before the day was out. As expected, she was not pleased. About 5 minutes after being served, my phone began buzzing incessantly. Ignoring all her calls, I anticipated the brewing storm upon my return home. Stepping into the house from the garage, Hester exploded in anger. You fool! She shouted. Your fragile male ego is bruised and you humiliate me in front of my colleagues. Just as you embarrassed us in front of our friends and neighbors the other day, I retorted. You practically begged me to file. So I did. She shot me a scornful look but remained silent. Putting down my belongings, I approached my children for a brief chat, reassuring them of my unwavering love despite us no longer sharing a home starting tomorrow. Elise grasped the situation, having friends with divorced parents, but Nate seemed puzzled. I knew he would struggle, but I was confident my daughter would lend support. Living in a no-fault state made the divorce process seem straightforward. She was expected to receive primary custody of the children, the house, child support, and some alimony. But no, she vehemently contested. For some inexplicable reason known only to her, her lawyer employed various tactics to prolong the proceedings, including insisting on meetings and even suggesting marital counseling. What's the deal? Have your actions spoken louder than your words? You say you love me, yet you've caused so much turmoil. And then you have the nerve to tell your friends he's the best you've ever had. Why would I want to remain in this marriage if all I get is aggravation? I love my kids, but if I stay with you, they'll only remember an embittered man, I expressed in one session. But I love you, Reg. Are you fixated on one incident? Yes, he was exceptional, but it was a one-time mistake. Please forgive me, she pleaded. I can't, Hess, I replied. You broke our vows and belittled their importance. I can't overlook that. You made promises to me. I hadn't planned to do this. Truly, I hadn't, but everyone has a breaking point. The beauty of a two-party political system lies in its contrast. Regardless of how you spin it, Senator Prick belonged to one side. meaning the opposing party would welcome anything that tarnished his reputation over a year ago. After Hester's affair, I devised a backup plan. I sought the help of a well-connected lawyer in our city to approach the chairman of the opposing political party, who was eager for anything that could damage the senator's chances of re-election and White House aspirations. Despite promising a hefty monetary reward, they eagerly awaited the information. He had to agree that the evidence would only be revealed if the possessor requested it. Every month, my lawyer kept me informed about the chairman's persistent requests. This month, we were ready to fulfill the chairman's demands. The meeting, my first involvement, was set in my lawyer's office. After introductions, I took out a sealed plastic bag from my briefcase and placed it on the conference table. The chairman's surprise was evident upon seeing the bag's contents. "Dear God," he muttered. "Is that what I think it is?" "If you suspect it's evidence that could end Senator Prick's career," I replied, "then yes." They regarded the bag as if it held precious gold bars. He refrained from touching it, instead continuing to stare in amazement. "That arrogant woman returned home and went upstairs for a shower," I recounted. "Since she handles the laundry, she probably assumed I wouldn't go through the basket." I waited until I heard the water running before entering the bathroom and finding the underwear at the bottom of the hamper. Everyone these days is familiar with DNA from television. I'm confident that when you test these, you'll find two distinct sets. Also, here's her toothbrush for DNA comparisons. I assume you'll obtain the senator's sample for matching, unless you already have it, I said, giving the chairman a stern look. He reddened and glanced away, just as I anticipated. I knew he grasped all the complexities of the case, so there was no need to reiterate them. However, I sensed his unspoken question in his expression. Why? Because she lacks the intelligence to realize she shouldn't cross me. She betrayed me, yet she arrogantly assumes I'll eventually forgive her. Now she's flaunting it in front of me. To hell with her and the senators she associates with, I declared. Your career is finished, Thomas. Damn you, Norberto, you foolish woman. How on earth could your weak husband obtain evidence of our weekend together? I suspected he was aware, but there was evidence. How Norberto raged at Hester on the phone a week after my meeting with the chairman, I do not know. I have no clue what you're talking about, she faltered. The phone call caught me off guard. I used to clone hers. I essentially admitted to her that I had tapped her phone some months ago and that they hadn't been communicating through that means, if at all. What did you do wrong? She asked when I returned her call 90 minutes later. I understood what she meant, but I was feeling vengeful, or so I thought. I just ordered a pepperoni pizza with garlic bread. Why do you care what I eat? Wait, how do you know what I eat? She snapped at me. From past encounters, I could tell she despised my foolish actions. While she may have seemed to view me as feeble, she knew better. Well, I guess being right about one thing out of two wasn't too bad. I'm not sure how you managed it, but it seems you got back at Senator Norberto in some way. He threatened to rough me up for something you did, though he wouldn't say what. Thanks, by the way, my parents are livid. Yours are too. Elise has been avoiding me, and you can't seem to grasp that what Thomas and I did was unrelated to our relationship. Yes, about that, I started. Senator Norberto, who was seemingly assured of retaining his seat, suddenly dropped out of the Senate race 8 months before the election, citing significant mental fatigue. With everything else going on in my life, seeking female companionship was the least of my concerns. I hadn't looked at a woman in an appealing way for months until my daughter brought it up. Daddy, when do you plan to start seeing other women? Elise asked casually. My children joined me for the second weekend. Linda's mom really wants to go out with you. I was stunned. My jaw must have dropped. Lost in the chaos of divorce, I hadn't thought much about my future beyond taking care of my kids. Every other weekend and a few weeks during the summer, Linda's mom brought it up. And you're okay with that? I asked, surprised. Well, she didn't directly tell me, Dad. Elise revealed she overheard her talking with Annie's mom, but yeah, I'd be fine with it. Dad, I don't want you to be alone, but please, not Marcy's mom. None of us kids liked her. Kids pick up on things, Dad. Linda's mom had been divorced from her for about 5 years. I had a terrible husband. She was a charming, lively blonde with curves who still carried the spirited vibe of her old cheerleading days. I had never considered she might be interested in me. When you're married, you don't think about other women's possibilities. At least I didn't. Was I naive? Elise was quietly keeping an eye on me. It's okay, Dad. I'm almost 9. I understand about divorce and all. Nate and I will be fine. Just take care of yourself. It seemed like I was back in the dating scene. Linda's mom, Julie, became my first date after re-entering the dating pool, and it felt nice, though somewhat obligatory. I explained to her that emotionally, I wasn't ready for anything serious yet, considering my recent return to dating. She responded with a comforting smile, telling me I didn't owe an explanation to every person I dated. Julie offered valuable advice, almost like a crash course on navigating life with divorced parents. She also mentioned that I would catch the eye of other divorced moms among my children's friends, given my reputation as a good father with a successful career and, well, not unattractive. She blushed a bit when she mentioned the last part. I went on to date Julie and a few other divorced mothers. Sometimes I hardly thought about my ex-wife, Hester, or our past marriage. While I admitted to feeling lonely at times, it wasn't enough to consider reconciling with her. I refused to entertain the idea of her betraying me again. Hester, however, quickly dismissed her affair as a foolish mistake, promising never to repeat it. A foolish mistake? I scoffed. It was poor judgment, a lack of respect, and ultimately selfishness. You prioritized an affair with the senator over your family's well-being? Her mouth opened and closed twice. I sensed her desire to respond, but she remained speechless. I half expected her to persist, despite the fact that she couldn't justify her actions, especially now that contacting the senator seemed pointless. One Saturday during dinner, while the kids and I were visiting, my ex-mother-in-law informed me that he had asked her never to contact him again. He seemed to think you played a role in his decision to withdraw from the Senate election, and that she didn't intervene enough, she recounted. I raised an eyebrow and continued eating quietly, opting not to comment. A few months later, some guys from work suggested going to a new upscale bar with a dance floor. When I was married, I avoided Thursday evening outings like the plague, but now that I'm single, I find myself going out regularly. 4 of us found a table, ordered drinks, and soaked in the atmosphere of the place. I noticed the 2 women as soon as they walked in. The first woman looked to be in her early 40s, but dressed more in line with individuals over 30, aiming to evoke a youthful vibe. She wore a silk blue shirt, slightly unbuttoned, and a short skirt accentuating her long, toned legs. With short, dark brown hair and green eyes, she seemed brimming with confidence. On the other hand, her friend seemed out of place in the pub setting. Slightly older than her companion, possibly in her early 40s, she exuded refinement and wealth. Clad in a sweater and skirt from a high-end store, she radiated elegance and beauty with her shoulder-length silver blonde hair and dark eyes. Seating themselves at a nearby table, the women quickly caught the attention of males eager to engage or dance with them. I couldn't shake the desire to dance with one of them. Particularly the dark-haired woman seemed ready for some fun, if not more. She readily accepted dances from every man who approached her. In contrast, the blonde woman danced sparingly and seemed more reserved in her movements. An hour later, I resolved to invite the blonde woman to dance. However, as I approached her table, the brunette grabbed my hand and whisked me onto the dance floor. I became completely captivated by her and forgot about her companion. We danced to upbeat songs until the tempo slowed. When she passionately kissed me, I was entranced. We left the club together and went to my place. Our passion carried over into the bedroom, and that night she shared details of her life. It turned out she and her friend were celebrating her recent divorce. Rosie proved to be an amazing lover, and we dated for about a month before she expressed hesitancy to commit so soon after her divorce. I respected her perspective, and we parted amicably. However, since our initial encounter, I've never had the chance to inquire about her friend, which sparked my curiosity. A few weeks later, I found myself alone in the bar of another upscale establishment, seeking solace with a drink. It wasn't my turn to care for the children after a long week, so I had the weekend to myself. She entered the room solo, capturing everyone's attention. Her figure resembled Megan from Stallion, with a cascade of rich brown locks framing her face and draping over her shoulders. Striding over in 4-inch stilettos, she settled next to me. Instantly, I felt like I'd stepped into heaven. I scrambled for a clever opening line, but before I could speak, she gazed into my eyes and asked for my drink order. I replied with a sly grin, feeling a twinge of envy at her poise, and my thoughts scattered. "Excellent choice," she purred. "A man with impeccable taste." Ordering the same undiluted drink as mine, she spent the evening sharing about the boutique marketing company she founded years ago. Remarkable. Not only was she captivating and intelligent, but she also ran a thriving business. Later, we departed for her charming apartment. She mentioned her preference for lovemaking in her own bed. a common sentiment among women, and delved into the psychology behind it. With her impeccably toned physique, I couldn't believe she was 45. Our first encounter was unforgettable. She was an exceptional kisser, and I felt a connection with her unlike any since my date with Hester. In just one night, Maria Washington opened up to me more honestly than Hester ever had. During our 9-year marriage, Maria confessed her dedication to her career and lack of desire for children, preferring casual relationships with various men. Despite developing genuine feelings for her, knowing a traditional relationship wasn't an option, I agreed to be friends with benefits for the next year. We met monthly until Marielle unexpectedly fell in love with a much younger man. "You're one lucky guy," my ex-mother-in-law would occasionally call me. Despite the divorce, we remained close, bound by mutual understanding and our grandchildren. I still referred to them as Mom and Dad. "Could I ask you a favor, Reg?" she inquired cautiously. "Of course, as long as it doesn't involve your daughter," I replied. It was a matter of courtesy to take my mother-in-law's request to bring her personal assistant to their upcoming company Christmas party seriously. She's a good-hearted person, Reg. She went through a divorce a few years ago from an abusive cheater, and I don't think she's dated anyone since. She was hurt, Reg, and she needs a decent guy to show her that not all men are scoundrels. And I think you're a decent guy, my ex-mother-in-law explained. Isn't it odd when your former mother-in-law tries to set you up on a date? Just one thing, Mom, I interjected. Please tell me she's not boring. Mom caught on to the humor and chuckled. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, Reggie. You might even let us keep the kids for a night or two, she teased. Mom was spot on. I was pleasantly surprised. Cheryl, or Sherilyn as she preferred, was a delightful bundle of charm with a well-proportioned figure. She was warm without being overly effusive, and she had a delightful habit of wrinkling her nose and squinting her green eyes when she was amused. Equally important, she had a genuinely great personality. I made a point of sticking close to Sherilyn throughout the evening, giving her my full attention, much like I would have with my ex-wife. Sherilyn seemed appreciative of the gesture. While she engaged in conversation, she tended to defer to others, which I suppose was understandable given her upbringing. We sat with my in-laws at a table. Mom was as graceful as ever, while Dad was more reserved. At first I understood his demeanor, but he grew more open as the evening progressed. I surprised Jerry with my dancing skills, which I had honed to please my ex-wife, Hester, who loved to dance. Sherilyn also demonstrated proficiency, especially in faster dances. And she complimented me perfectly in slow dances, as if we had been dancing together for years. I savored the feeling of her body against mine as I escorted Sherilyn to the door. She gave me a gentle kiss on the lips and handed me her phone number. I realized I owed my in-laws more time with their grandchildren. After 3 days, I called Sherilyn to ask her out. She agreed to a date the following Friday at one of the city's finest Italian restaurants, followed by an art exhibit at a nearby gallery. Sherilyn dressed more provocatively for our date than she did at the Christmas party, which impressed me even more. We had a wonderful time, and we went out 3 more times before I felt it was time for her to meet my 8-year-old daughter and for me to meet hers. We spent quality time together, playing mini-golf and enjoying a picnic in a nearby park. Overall, I felt it went smoothly, particularly because the 2 girls developed a strong bond. However, as expected for his age, my kid wasn't thrilled because he believed all girls had cooties. Sherry and I met several times a week, and when I had my children, we engaged in family activities together, including all 5 of us. Everything was going well until a few weeks into the new school year, when I received an unexpected phone call from Hester. I'm not sure what your girlfriend has been teaching my kids, but your son was in the principal's office today for fighting, and his face is all beaten up. He's been suspended for 3 days, and all he can say is that it all started with this Monique girl he keeps calling his sister, she raged over the phone. First and foremost, you have no right to call my girlfriend names like that. I'll come over after dinner and take Nate out for ice cream. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know exactly what happened, I responded calmly. I heard her sigh before she hung up. After dinner, I picked up Nate and took him to a small, family-owned ice cream parlor. As soon as he got into my car, I conducted a thorough visual inspection. He had a cut on his lip and a scratch on the left side of his face. He joked, "You should see the other guy, Dad." "What's the truth, Nathan Abraham?" I responded with his full name to emphasize seriousness. He winced at the mention of his first and middle names. "A kid was bullying Mo, Dad. I told him to leave my sister alone. He threw the first punch. Then I punch him hard. They say I broke his nose. It made a loud crack, and there was blood everywhere," he he explained, trying to hide a grin. The boy who bothered Mo was 2 years older than Nate. Will Mo tell me the same story? I asked. Absolutely, Dad. I wouldn't have punched him if he hadn't thrown the first punch. I was just defending Mo. You always tell me to look out for Allie, so I figured it applied to Mo too. She's really small, Dad, Nate said. Nate had a valid point. Monique inherited her mother's petite stature, making her at least half a head shorter than most of her peers. I had always stressed to Nate the importance of looking out for his sister, and it seemed he now saw Monique as part of his family. It was fascinating how the innocence of childhood sometimes outweighed the wisdom of experience. I commend you for protecting Mo, but let's keep it between us, I told him. I'll speak with the principal and see what can be done. You might want to update your mother on Mo's status. It seems you and Elise haven't been keeping her fully informed about my life, which I appreciate. However, it might be better coming from you and Elise, I said. I mentioned that my 7-year-old understood completely. Children mature quite quickly these days. And Dad, when are you and Sherry tying the knot? She's amazing, you know, he added. As I mentioned earlier, kids grow up fast, and he was right. It was time to make a commitment to that woman. The following day, I reached out to the principal. The school had a strict zero-tolerance policy for fighting, regardless of whether it was self-defense. However, they also had a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. As a result, the aggressor received a 6-day suspension following interviews with witnesses. Although I disagreed with the policy, I advised him not to contest his punishment manually. Furthermore, I assured him of my support and promised to propose to Sherry as soon as I could afford the ring. Things got complicated when Hester discovered Sherry was Mom's personal assistant and that Mom had scheduled their first meeting. "What on earth, Mom? Aren't you supposed to be on my side?" Hester yelled later. "According to Mom, there's no your side," Mom replied. "He's not coming back to you. You completely messed that up. So why let a good man go to waste? Carolyn is a wonderful woman and a great friend. She deserves someone like Reggie." Mom described Hester's scream as horrifying as she recounted the incident. While both my children enjoyed Sherry's company, my daughter in particular seemed to admire her nurturing demeanor towards me. Sherry had a natural inclination to fulfill my desires, making me feel like the master of my domain. This, in turn, encouraged me to treat her like my queen. Elise seemed to enjoy witnessing the affectionate banter between Sherry and me. "I'm not sure if you two are endearing or nauseating," Elise remarked one day, "but I enjoy being around to witness it." A couple of months later, our lovemaking wedding only included our 3 children, my parents, and my ex-in-laws as guests. The court clerk who officiated the ceremony was surprised when my ex-mother-in-law stood as Sherry's maid of honor. "It's quite a story," I chuckled when she inquired. "Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition to come from the classic British comedy ensemble Monty Python's Flying Circus. But truth be told, nobody expects an inquiry from a federal marshal either." I was taken completely by surprise when 2 officials entered my office on a Monday morning. It seemed the authorities were upset about a certain former senator's altercation and subsequent injury in the restroom of an upscale restaurant in Houston, Texas. My name, along with that of several other aggrieved husbands, emerged as potential suspects. "I can't say I'm sorry to hear about the senator's troubles. Nobody, and I truly mean that, deserves it more," I remarked to the disgruntled marshals. "You do realize that the fool slept with my then-wife almost 4 years ago. If I had any intentions, wouldn't I have acted long before now?" I retorted with heavy sarcasm. However, the grilling from the federal agents was just the beginning. A week later, a reporter from the Associated Press showed up at my office, seeking details about the aforementioned incident. It appeared he had somehow obtained a confidential roster of 26 women the senator allegedly had affairs with during his time in office. At this point, several individuals were aware of Hester's rendezvous with the senator. Though I certainly didn't publicize it over the years, Hester likely disclosed it to more people than I did. As she took pride in her achievement, however, I couldn't help but wonder about her level of pride when news of the senator's misconduct emerged, implicating her as one of his lovers. "Why did you disclose that to him?" she practically yelled at me over the phone. "I didn't. He informed me that your name was on the senator's roster. All I did was confirm the accuracy of your inclusion on the list. I wasn't going to fabricate to spare you from embarrassment." "Promiscuous. I am not promiscuous," she screamed at me before I ended the call. I must confess I chuckled. I also entertained the thought of taking an extended vacation out of town when the news article broke. She messed up, literally. And yet I was going to suffer an embarrassing fallout as well. Cherry talked me out of that notion. Don't engage in any confrontation. Stick to the truth. She cheated on you, divorced her. Move on, Cherry advised. Unfortunately, my children were going to endure verbal bullying for the remainder of their school years. We would be addressing the fact that their mother was a self-centered cheater for years to come. I also sympathized greatly with my ex-in-laws, who had become close friends of ours. After the article came out, we invited them to stay with us in the house we had purchased for a couple of weeks. During that time, they mostly stayed indoors and avoided answering their phones. I adore my daughter. You grasp the parental emotions, but I'm deeply ashamed that she thought it acceptable to engage in promiscuous behavior, Dad confessed. No father wants his daughter to be perceived in that manner. As time elapsed, the scandal dissipated, and life resumed its usual course. Gradually, my children began spending more time with Cherry, Mo, and me at our house. It wasn't formal, but our home naturally evolved into the neighborhood kids' gathering spot. Initially, Hester objected, but I believe things smoothed over. Furthermore, I ensured Elise and Nate maintained open communication with Hester to prevent her from accusing me of alienating her children again. Mom and Dad's frequent visits helped alleviate tensions. When the kids were with me, we seldom discussed Hester. Although she remained their mother, she became an ex in my life. They also refrained from mentioning her out of respect for Sherry, whom they now referred to as Mom. Initially, I sensed discomfort from Hester's parents when the kids started calling Cherry Mom, but that soon faded as they had been close to Cherry even before our marriage. Amidst the upheaval in my life and my family's, I paid scant attention to Hester's affairs. I knew she occasionally dated based on the kids' remarks, but I was startled when Elise announced one afternoon that her mother was engaged. A wave of sadness engulfed me for what might have been. Then, I felt a comforting embrace envelop me, and my sorrow swiftly transformed into joy for what I now possessed.